you can call me and save me. It's always complicated when there's some things that you need to say. Just blame it on your issues, baby. Know you let a lie just to get by. Keep them chased by my bitch just to get high. Can't entertain it if it ain't a good time. Y'all need to start explaining it a good vibe. And I can count all the times it was all fine, but really you just put your pain in a disguise. Gucci glasses, I can never turn a blind eye. Drink tequila by the liter like it's red wine, yeah. Mix uppers with some downers. I know your heart is heavy.
Yo, what is up, you guys? It's LZ Hoops back at it with another fire performance test. This time I got the Freak 4s, Nike's newest shoe for Giannis Antetokounmpo. So yeah, well, without any further ado, let's get right into it. So for the traction, the Freak 3s have this pressure map traction performance with these long blades that allow for this multi-directional traction both laterally and front to back. It's basically this pressure map of a foot. I don't know if it's Giannis's or someone else's foot, but it contains these long blades to give you that multi-directional support and traction. The traction actually is pretty good. They don't really pick up dust, and on most court conditions, they seem to be pretty reliable. However, there is a bit of a big drawback, and I find that it's because it's not that squeaky. And personally, I really do like shoes that squeak a lot. And, I like the ones that have a loud, audible squeak. And I feel like it's super useful for, setting my footwork, or maybe if it's just mental. But nonetheless, I really like shoes that squeak. But without that, the traction is still pretty good. They don't pick up dust, and they grip pretty well on most floors. Overall, the traction, I'd say, is pretty good, but it's not top tier like the PG5s, PG6s, or the KD15s. So finally, I think I'd give this traction an 87 out of 100. Onto the cushioning, Nike put a huge emphasis on the last two Giannis shoes with this Zoom pods under the forefoot. And basically, Giannis is this 4-foot dominant player who takes these big steps and attacks ferociously down the hill. And because of this trope, they designed the shoes in a way to integrate, their newest technology with this playstyle. So what they did was they added these two large Zoom pods in the forefoot with a super plush Phylon, maybe Cushlon foam in the heel, and around the pods as a carrier. What can I say? Overall, I'm not the biggest fan of this cushioning setup. The Zoom pods do work, and when you attack, you do feel a super subtle spring-like propulsion, but to be honest, it's not as nice as the double stack Zoom or even the Zoom Turbo and the Kyries. So in my opinion, I feel like these Zoom pods are kind of gimmicky. They don't really perform well. They're high off the ground. They're stiff, but they are pretty responsive. So I guess in a sense, it depends on how your play style is like, but personally, I don't really like these. They're also not that comfortable because they do sit right under your forefoot, and they are like pretty stiff. It's kind of like striking on on like a plastic water bottle or something. I don't know how to describe the feeling. They are responsive, but at the same time, they're not that nice. But yeah, overall, I'm not a big fan of this cushioning, but the heel cushioning is pretty nice though. So if you do need a heel strike to absorb impact, you'll be good there. So once again, if you're a guard, I wouldn't really recommend this setup because it's just so high off the ground, and when you're moving laterally, it's just not the best for a guard. But if you are like one of these wing players that play like Giannis, you're a slasher that drives in, you like to take these big steps, and you're like a one-legged jumper, I feel like this is a pretty good shoe for you. It's just not the shoe for me. But if that's how you play, then by all means, this shoe would be perfect for you. Overall, I give the cushioning an 80 out of 100. So, now on to the support and lockdown. If you guys remember, I had the huge complaint with the Freak 3s. Basically, what would happen is that when you went to make lateral movements and shifted your weight laterally, the entire lateral side of the shoe would collapse inwards. Now, this is due to two main reasons. The first reason was that, they basically hollowed out the entire midsection, and this would allow the shoe to collapse under a lot of weight, and it would kill your arches. And second of all, there is no lateral outrigger, and the softness of the foam caused the shoe to invert. And because there's no lateral outrigger and the foam was soft and there's nothing containing the side of your foot, your ankle is basically inverted as you move laterally. Now, this was a huge issue because if you had weak ankles, this could very well end your season. Now, I must say though, Nike seem to have addressed these issues on the Freak 4s. First of all, the overall structure of the shoe seems to be a lot more stiff. This means that the midfoot area won't collapse as much and your arches won't hurt as much. They also made the shoe shape a lot wider. The last Freak 3s killed my feet, and not only were they narrow, they were weirdly shaped as well. I know not everyone has the same foot shape, but for me and many people like me, these shoes, the Freak 3s, simply sucked. They also added an outrigger, and this outrigger greatly reduces the chance of you hurting your ankles, as now you have a wider base, and when you make these lateral movements, you kind of have something to stop your momentum. And finally, that backwards Nike swoosh actually does contain your feet on lateral movements, and you definitely aren't sliding over the bed like you were on the Freak 3s. The only issue with this shoe right now, in terms of support and lockdown, I'd say is the Zoom pod. Since you're so high off the ground, of course you're not gonna be as supportive as a lower to the ground shoe, but in all honesty, it's way better than the Freak 3s. I can actually comfortably recommend these. The wider base, the outrigger, the stiffer frame, and the backwards Nike logo all contribute to make the lateral support of the shoe way better than the last version. Basically, these are actually suitable for playing now. Well, they aren't the best, they do get the job done, and they are pretty solid. In terms of containment, the textile upper allows the shoe to be tied super tight, and it wraps around your foot with no issues with any heel slipping or anything of that nature. So overall, I'd give the lateral containment and support an 88 out of 100, while the lockdown gets a 90 out of 100. So, onto the fit and aesthetics. Well, first of all, they fit true to size, and they're pretty wide in the forefoot now. So, for you wide footers, you will be okay going true to size. If you do have narrow feet, just due to the nature of the shoe, you might find it a bit wider in the forefoot, but I think you'll be fine. So, as J.A. Jones would always say, if you wear that 10, get that 10. Aesthetic-wise, I think these are pretty clean. I mean, I would change some colorways, but honestly, there's no major complaints. I really like how these look on feet, so I think these are a pass for me. Overall, the fit is good, and I think these look good as well, so you can't go wrong with the fit and aesthetics. Finally, onto my final thoughts. Let's start off with the pros and cons. So, for the pros, you have some decently good traction, you have some good lockdown, and you have some good aesthetics. The cons, well, they're high off the ground, they don't squeak, and it's a subpar cushioning setup, and they kind of feel clunky. So what I would say is, if you are a forward who likes to shoot threes, slash, and attack downhill and want a nice responsive setup, and you're not too worried about lateral movements and support, then these are the perfect shoe for you. Basically, if you play like Giannis, or if you are a slasher, these shoes are actually really nice. But if you are a shifty guard, who needs to make these lateral movements, they need to make these nice crossovers and drive by people, maybe stay away from these shoes. They're not my favorite, and I kind of play like that, so if you want to listen to me, then yeah, I wouldn't recommend these for guards. But basically, final thoughts. I actually like these shoes. They are a major upgrade from the last Freak 3s, and I feel like these are a pretty solid budget performer. They have some nice technology, they feel nice, they look good, and it's a shoe that a lot of people overall would enjoy. So my final rating for these shoes gets an 85 out of 100. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching my videos. I appreciate all the love, all the likes and supports, and all the subs. It means a lot and helps me with these new videos. So, anyways, thanks you guys. Be out. Peace.